Hello. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Jeff Rolka. Thank you for joining me for this week's live event. I think it's working. It seems to be indicating that things should start here. Is it started? Start encoder. You're live. I assume that everything is working. Please let me know if it is not. Flip over here. Jürgen, if you can hear me, I hope you're enjoying your coffee there, north of Prague in the Czech Republic. That is really, really cool. Yes, I imagine it is cold there. This isn't, I don't think this is working. Let me see if this is working. It says it's working. It should be working. I should be, in fact, broadcasting. But I'm not sure what is going on here. Let's go back over to this screen. Let's see here. Let's flip over to this screen and see if I am in fact live. And that will tell me quite certainly, no, it's definitely not live. Why would that be? I have started my encoder. I wonder if I have the correct. What is going on? This is not right. Let's go over here. Sorry, folks. I am really trying to work this out. I don't know what has occurred here. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. I see. Okay, so for those of you that are actually, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. What has happened here? Hot in Florida? Hello, hello, Janet. Yes, good. Okay. So here's what's going on here. Give me a second to get everything organized, and then I can explain to you. This is just absurd. So hang in there, everybody. What's actually occurring right now is that YouTube is in fact streaming this video to do two different places. Hello, Ronaldo. So this is so silly. Okay, 1 second. We're almost good to go here. Okay, now I have everything groovy, I guess. David Walsh, hello. And Bishy J Official Ronaldo, hey everyone. Flo Logan, thank you for joining me. Okay, so here's what's occurred. This is so ridiculous. YouTube, greetings. Hey, you're a new user ID I have not seen before. Enjoy your videos, sing them all the time on your way to work. Very cool. What's happened here is that YouTube gave us this new function in scheduling live events that would allow us to create new events based off old settings. And I always select mine to create unique stream keys, so that specifically to try to avoid what's happened here. But basically, there are two different live streams coming into YouTube right now. And so there's two different chats that are open. What was supposed to be live event 91, because I stopped and restarted the stream, has been basically swept aside. And since YouTube even though I told it to select different keys, assign the same key to all these live events. So now, if you're watching this on live event 92 or live event 93, both of those chats are in fact open. And I have no way to stop it without stopping my encoder, which would cut all the live feeds, and then I'd have to reschedule the whole thing all over. So I'm just going to go with it. And you can basically type into the chat in either of these, it looks like. Market Forces, thank you. I'm glad that you like the lava lamp. David Walsh, how do you make adjustments in your throat when you sing? I don't mean that squeezing out high notes, but more like small excursion larynx adjustments. Honestly, David, the thing is that by the time you're trying to, and this, there's another question on the other live event by Bishy J Official, which says, how do you make the strongest sound singing in mixed voice? What technique is applied? They're kind of related here. Those minor adjustments, we don't really make them consciously. What we do is to work towards reducing as much engagement as we possibly can around the muscles of the larynx by focusing on engagement and airflow. And in so doing, that musculature is allowed to adapt as efficiently as it possibly can. And we do this by evaluating our voices and evaluating how we're using them. So if you're singing into the mix range of your voice and it's always kind of hollow sounding, well, we might use that as a means by which to know that you are using your cricothyroid dominant singing voice when you're first learning to sing into your upper register. But over time, you want to keep on reducing that. And we reduce this by, usually, my instructions for this, when I'm working with people, is to have them make a diminuendo as they descend. This has the effect of releasing more tension on the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, the chest voice muscles that are active there right around the secondo passaggio. And then when you reascend, you get a much cleaner transition and you get more of the overall, the resonances tend to match a little bit better. Let me plug my system in here. We're all discombobulated this morning. So over time and practice, that very hollow starts to match more and more. And of course, we practice that with all the different vowels. So that we get nice seamless connections across the secondo passaggio. So Bishy J Official, the short answer to your question is work on balance. And David Walsh, working on balance is how we learn to make those minor adjustments, but we do it primarily by listening and paying attention to the internal experience, the feeling. What is it? What are the internal sensations like? So, market forces and folks, you're gonna have to bear with me here. I'm gonna have to bounce. I've got both of the chats up, but yeah, this could be a little bit interesting. Market forces. Hi, Jeff. I'm starting classical training. I spend a lot of time singing my head off. Brilliant. I'm worried about tiring the voice. How much is too much practice? How I'm inclined to say how long is a piece of string. That might be because of your Union Jack ID picture there, which is to say, pay close attention to your voice and see how you go. More and more, I'm teaching 4-5 hours. In addition to whatever singing I may do on any given day. Thursday, I think I taught 6 or 7 hours this week. And no, I'm not singing that entire time. But the thing is that I try to mostly sing things correctly. Now, I have an additional liability where I often demonstrate things incorrectly in order to try to help my clients hear the differences so that they can learn what we're looking for. But basically, listen to your body is the short way of saying that. Listen to your body, be very conscientious. Notice also, like, the next day. If you're really, really phlegmy the next day, then you may have overdone it a little bit. And make sure that you're staying well hydrated. Be patient as that phlegm gets worked off the vocal fold. And then and then see how you go with that day. As your technique, presumably your technique will continue to become more precise and improved overall. And that should enable you to sing for rather long periods of time without really feeling like you're overly tired or hoarse or really you've had too much. I would observe carefully how much fatigue you endure with your singing. If you're really, really getting hoarse or you're really getting fatigued, then evaluate how you're integrating the technical concepts that you're working on, particularly with upper register work. Finally, I am reminded of Chopin. When I get asked this question, I often reflect on that. And Chopin, of course, was a piano teacher and composer, and would often be somewhat critical of his students. He always advised them to not practice more than 3 hours a day. That he felt that beyond that, you were really well into the law of diminishing returns on your practice time, the physical practice of the instrument, and that your time was better spent studying music theory, music history, doing some listening, critical listening, not casual listening, things of that nature. And I would suggest you at least give that some consideration, that beyond an hour or two of dedicated intensive practice, your time may be better spent in the pursuit of the other aspects of what it is to be a musician, studying music theory, history, listening, those sorts of things. Great question. Thank you. Flo, Logan, Jeff, I'm just getting over the flu. Still a little weak. Throat still a little achy. I wish you well. The flu this year is really bad, and I hope that you feel better very soon. Heidi Banker, hello. Love the lamp. Thank you. I have always, since I first encountered a lava lamp, I have always been a fan. I don't know why. I just love them. I have two, in fact. One's red. They're both red. I'm going to have to get a purple one at some point. Georgie. Hello, Jeff. What is my vocal type? My lowest note is F2 and my highest is B4, C5. That range doesn't really correspond with any real vocal category. A B4, B5, if you're male, then that exceeds basically all the ranges. So first step is to really get a good sense of where the secondo passaggio is. There is no male vocal type that has the secondo passaggio at that tessitura. Hello, Karina. Welcome. Please tell me what I can do to improve my mixed voice. Work on balance is the short way of putting that. And actually, I talked about that briefly just a minute ago. You might want to circle back around, but balance is where it's at. Balance in airflow, balance in vocal fold engagement. I might add that this is a very dynamic balance. So it does, the balance of engagement, subglottic air pressure and airflow and vocal fold engagement changes as we move through the different ranges of our voice. Flo, Logan, Worsham. Have to be in the studio tomorrow. What can I do about my voice? Can you tell me a bit more? It seems like it's kind of, with the two different chats going, like the message, it's pretty even. So tell me a bit more, like what's going on? I mean, honestly, hopefully you've been doing your homework before the session. I mean, that's your biggest asset, is a daily vocal practice and diligent practice with the materials that you're meant to be recording. Doing that in the weeks prior to your studio session is your greatest preparation. But tell me a bit more about what the problem may be going into tomorrow, and perhaps I can help. Duck before you drown. Thank you. Agility. I am reminded of Hans Floren, a kind of reasonably famous speed climber in the rock climbing community, who always said speed is power. With speed comes great balance. So agility is usually the kinds of things that I work on. I'm sometimes the comments come up in YouTube that the exercises are too fast. Speed is power. Hans Floren said that. I'm just kind of borrowing it. Scooching back over. Market forces. How does extending the range for tenors work? I've been given some exercises on a CD, but there is a point where I hit the roof and I have to do falsetto. Do I just stay in my comfort zone? I would advise you to be very cautious about that. Because if you are, and it depends on where that roof is. If you're hitting the top around like F4 or something like that, or, if you're a major second or a minor third from that, like, if you're a male vocalist and you're hitting the roof at A4, well, the secondo passaggio is below that. And so you've missed the chance to make a smooth transition. If you want to extend your range, I advise kind of just what I demonstrated a few minutes ago. My secondo passaggio is about right there. If I purposely let the vocal fold abduct, then I'll get a falsetto kind of sound. And if I didn't know how to make a smooth transition, I might hit the wall somewhere in that area or a little bit above it, because I just wouldn't really be able to force my voice to go much higher. But by making a smooth transition, I can keep going. And that's what we do. We learn to make that transition, and it usually comes in stages. First stage is, I can't do it. It goes to falsetto. The second stage is, okay, let's find out how our cricothyroid dominant singing voice works. That's the head voice. It's usually initially quite hollow or dull sounding. And it's like, oh, it sounds weird in my head and it doesn't match. Yes, this is like learning to walk. Okay, we're learning to walk here. And so we're just figuring out how to do that transition a little smoother. And then eventually, we get the balance to be more efficacious. And we get voce piena in testa, the sound of chest, voice, and head. Jürgen, yes. And no, you can't send links in these chats because it doesn't. YouTube doesn't. It's a long story, but it doesn't work. But yes, there are in fact 2 simultaneous live events going on. It is not my fault. I was trying to schedule a bunch of live events this morning because I knew this was supposed to be the last one from a series. And YouTube, even though it's supposed to be okay, it's a long story. It's not worth going into. There are 2 live events. Yes, Jürgen, there is a mirror. It's like Mirror World. There was a really cool movie like that. David Walsh, seems right. My best sounds, clear and nice vibrato, happen when I open the throat and forget it. It's like the sound follows my thoughts as opposed to muscling it out my throat. Thank you. You're very welcome, David. My pleasure. Thank you, Karina. That's very kind. Since we're on this topic, can you tell us how to get the audience to absorb our singing more, or to be a great singer? Aw, shucks. What kind of elements, quality we need to have? That's a really interesting question. It's a very interesting question, Karina. And like we could have like a whole live event devoted to that, honestly. Goodness me, man, where does one even start? So Okay. Okay. So for one thing, I don't know. It's like there's so many different ways to. Okay. So here's one thing. All right. Here's one thing. One practice that I have encountered in my years of studies is the notion of like there comes a point where like one might suggest, this is just a suggestion, that our emotional involvement or our emotional sort of integrity with what we are singing is palpable to our audience. They can sense that. It's arguable whether this is true or not. I mean, who am I to say? But I have come across that on several different occasions. And one might suggest that that involvement on our part is what it makes it interesting, is the coin of our trade, so to speak. And we best learn where that is by, in our practice, approaching that line where we might break down. Like if you've ever been so emotionally involved in a song where you get verklempt, where you can't sing anymore because you've become like too emotionally involved, and so you get verklempt. We need to find where that line is and find out how we can approach it without getting too overcome with emotion ourselves, and try to exist in that space in our performances right up to that line. I find that to be a very interesting exercise. Personally, I find it very easy to fall across the line. I get verklempt very easily. I can become overwhelmed with emotion very, very easily. If you've watched really carefully in these live events, you've seen it happen because it's happened a couple times. Additionally, not additionally. Anyways, that is one way that we can try to ramp up the emotional engagement. I've also been told that if we feel like we're not communicating with the audience, I mentioned this last week, I think, is to amp up our rhythm, to really, really engage the rhythmical qualities of our performances. And what I would suggest to you as well, Karina, if you're singing classical music, this is different because then choosing your repertoire can be a little bit trickier. But if you're singing popular music, then find the things that are authentic to you. Sing the songs that are really authentic in your heart and in your mind. If and no judgment about anything. If you try to do a Pink Floyd tune and it just doesn't work for you, but doing down-tempo Britney Spears covers just makes you weep, do that. Do that. That is saying something to you, and that is what you can say to us, what we will receive, and we will respond to that, I think. But like I said, I could go on for days about this, and this is those conversations that you have over a cup of coffee, over an afternoon, at a sidewalk cafe. I'm thinking mostly in Barcelona, probably because those sidewalk cafes, they just extend outwards to the street, and you can sit there with your cafe and maybe a pain au chocolat and talk about this for days. That sounds like a lot of fun. So that's what I would, a little off topic, but anyways, that's what I would suggest to you. I'm so sorry about this message split, but I'm doing my best here. Yeah, Jürgen, having a vodka now. Jürgen, stay warm over there north of Prague. Chad, a touring neo-soul friend of mine, said he used to sing into paper towel rolls to work on pitch and recommended this to me when I asked about it for working on my pitch. Does this really help? I don't know. I suspect that may have helped them, hear a little bit better. I don't know. Sometimes singing through straws or things like that have the effect of helping us to narrow our concept of air column, which usually falls back on having better overall adduction, what is commonly referred to as vocal cord or vocal fold closure. And when the adduction is better, assuming good subglottic pressure, airflow, assuming good airflow, and then you get the good closure, usually the voice tends to balance out and you do better with intonation. That may be how it's working. Haven't really tried that, but I've certainly sung through straws before, and that can have a really, really focusing effect on the overall vocal production. Let me see here. I'm noticing that it requires more air to produce lower notes, as I've been embracing my low baritone. Breath control is a big must-have. Absolutely. I commend you for your observation. Nkaruka. Hello. How do I keep my tongue flat on vowels such as A and E? My tongue stays flat when I do other vowel shapes. Well, the rear of the tongue actually, the vowel shapes are benefited from a lift in the rear of the oral cavity. What I would suggest to you is that lift, depending on the overall kind of resonances that you are going for, that lift shouldn't go down entirely. If it's going down entirely, especially at the rear, then you are singing the other vowels too much like the speaking voice, and that's going to make it so that they never line up. They're never going to resonate quite the same. So I would evaluate that and see what's going on back there. Market forces, you're welcome. Thank you for your question. Jair. Yes, Jair. Hello. Thankfully, my voice is better now and even stronger. Wonderful. Do you have any videos on breathing exercises that help strengthen to sing with diaphragm? Diaphragmatic warm-up. Right there. It's one of my favorite videos that I've done, and it's a really, really good integration of airflow exercises into the vocalizations, so you really get to do kind of both at the same time. If you're not entirely familiar with Apogeo breath management, check out the Apogeo breathing video, because that goes through the process of how to establish Apogeo and get that suspension to occur. Eduardo, Jeff, this week I found this exercise called Uh-Oh. I think this is kind of a glottal attack and other variations. They are designed to make the passaggio more smooth and the head voice more strong. They are really working for me, but I wanted to know if you know what I'm talking about and if it is bad for my voice. Thank you, Eduardo. That's very kind of you to say. I'm not entirely sure of what that exercise may be. I suspect that it's probably okay. I would caution you with glottal attacks, particularly at and above the secundo passaggio. That can be really, really taxing on your voice and fatiguing. I mean, I don't think you're going to incur any damage with a short period of usage of those. But additionally, we will want to work. You will want to work the glottal attack out of your technique of establishing phonation above the secundo passaggio with a smooth transition. In other words, every time you sing a note, you don't want to have a glottal attack at the beginning of the phrase. What can be very helpful is maybe try alternating an M, ma, me. It's a very light M sound. And that can help you to establish how the vocal fold is going to create the pitch without the glottal attack. And it might be a little tricky, and see how successful you are. If you're really unsuccessful with it, then maybe come back next week and tell me what's going on, or ask another question, or see what's happening. There are a bunch of videos on my channel too that deal with registration events and learning to establish the upper register of the voice. And some of those I don't particularly fancy exercises that have a lot of epiglottis usage, or that use a really hyperglottic kind of sound to get the vocal fold to adduct above the secondo passaggio. In other words, like if you've typically been skating off or getting into a falsetto tone production, it gets really airy and light. It can be very challenging to get the vocal fold to stay adducted or closed. But there are some exercises that you can do that don't involve the epiglottis, nor do they involve a real hyperglottic kind of phonation. But let me know how it goes. Let me know what's going on. Tadeus, hello. Haven't heard from you in a few weeks. Welcome. Hello, Jeff. While singing E sound is quite easy to place in the mask, yet A and O sounds move back to my throat. Any suggestions how to place and keep these sounds in the front? Yeah, of course. My favorite way to work with that is the NG exercise. So, you would say hung, and that has the effect of lifting the rear of the tongue and closing off the mouth to airflow. And we can practice that way. You want to feel it. If it feels back, and try to keep it moving forward. And you release to the vowel in question that you want to practice. If you don't have the resonance quite right, you'll hear it reflected in the vowel. You can hear how how far down that sounds. That's one of my favorite ways to do it. The other way, depending on, and it depends a little bit on your technical facility, where you are right now. Jurgen, if your train is canceled, it's time for vodka number 2, I think, right? Is that how that works in Prague? I could be wrong. I'm sorry to hear about your train, especially if it's cold outside. That's no fun. What was I saying now? Right. So depending on where you are in your overall kind of technical facility, one of my other favorite ways to do this is to sandwich the vowel that's not cooperating in between ones that are. So, like you've got E, but it sounds like A and O are not cooperating. So do a passage like, pardon me, I'm like talking and gulping air here. So sandwich the non-cooperating vowels between the one that does. E, E, O, E. And what this does is it lets you hear them back to back. And the goal is to try to keep the alignment the same. So the physical sensations around the E vowel, you want to maintain them with the vowel that's in the middle. Initially, the vowel in the middle may really not sound quite right, but just practice it a little bit and find out where it resonates the same as E, but still sounds like the vowel it's supposed to sound like. Also, I would start this in the most comfortable area of your voice. Literally limit yourself to maybe a major second or a minor third of overall tessitura in the middle of your sweet spot. So stay out of the zona de passaggio and stay out of the lower range of your voice. Just focus on vowel alignment, and then as the alignment as it comes into alignment, then start to move around. Albie, thanks a lot for your videos. They're precious. Wonderful. Thank you. Jay, I have a hard time keeping my soft palate raised when singing and tend to go flat. Is it something to do with the tongue position? Well, those two things I think are quite related, but I don't think that the lowering of the soft palate is what's making you go flat. What's happening, what I suspect is happening, I would have to hear you, but what I suspect is happening is that you're actually carrying too much muscle tension around the larynx. And this is having the effect of having your pitches start to go flat. As you hear that and you try to fix it, you're inadvertently tensing more of the soft tissue in the oral cavity. And that's going to draw the soft palate down almost certainly and just exacerbate the whole thing. So, you can do those inner smile exercises and things like that. But really, the NG exercise that I just talked about is a great balancing exercise for the voice too. That would probably be very, very helpful. That will also have you lifting the soft palate a little bit. And yeah, that's basically it. The thing about the soft palate is when we practice, and I just saw this question. Good afternoon, Robret. I just saw V. Manaharan's question here. How can you feel the soft palate, and how much do you need to lift it? Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And the thing of it is that the soft tissues in the oral cavity, we want to allow them to be flexible and released so that they can go into the position that is most suited for what we are singing. The idea is that with good subglottic air pressure and cultivation of release around the vocal fold, the tissues will adapt and take the shapes much more quickly than we can try to force them into position. So when we do soft palate exercises, what we're doing is we're learning to be aware of it and learning to be aware of those muscles so that we can let them be released. There may be times when we exaggerate the position for effect, but mostly we want it to be balanced. How do we become aware of that musculature? That's my favorite little thing that I do every once in a while here, is to snort like a pig. So if you can do that, you'll feel the musculature there in the soft palate, and you can learn to become aware of that, notice when it's tensing or when it's not, and have appropriate lift. But that NG exercise, I think, is really, really good at establishing good, consistent alignment and a slight amount of soft palate lift. Karina, yes, thank you. Sing songs that we can identify with, but what do you say to your audience between songs? Chit chat. That too, I used to practice my repartee quite a bit while I when I was gigging a lot, I would absolutely practice my repartee to kind of feel that too. I just feel like if I had one tip in term that would relate to but making a connection with the audience that I am presenting to, is to look for your authentic self, to be authentically who you are, and they will perceive that, they will see it, and they will respond to it. I just keep on coming back to the idea that if I'm coming to see you perform, or if we spun it around, if you're coming to see me perform, I know when I go to see you, I want to see you. I want to see your authentic self on stage, as much of that as you're willing to bring. And the more of that you bring, the more I'm probably going to dig it and identify with and just be engaged with. And that, to me, has always been what's worked really well for me. Now, there are other kinds of little tricks and things that I used to do in playing clubs and stuff like that to try to establish initial interactions from which I can then begin to, interact and engage with the people that we were there together making music. I was making the music, but we're all participating in some capacity that I was making music with. Yeah, I'm just thinking about something I used to do with volume. I'm a big advocate of having a very dynamic performance, and terms of like volume fluctuations, and that can be incredibly instructive when you are in a room that's if it's really really way too loud, then it can be tricky or just not effective. But if it's of moderate volume, then if you vary your dynamics, being just from a little bit loud to going a little bit soft to a little bit loud, like you'll start to feel the room come along with you. And that's the kind of engagement that I'm talking about as an initial means by which to engage with your audience. I always found that to be an incredible experience to start it, and then over the course of a few songs start to feel the room ebb and flow with the dynamics that I was doing. Oftentimes these are like solo guitar vocal gigs or solo piano vocal gigs that I was doing. Really, really interesting stuff, I meant to say. Muhammad Jafari, hello, Mr. Jem. My passaggio is between B4 and A4, and the tenor passaggio lessons you have are F sharp and G4, if I'm not mistaken. Can you do a video at that region, or are the alto videos already high enough? Yeah, the alto videos would probably be fine. There are a few tenors that are tenor range videos that are extended range that go up to C5 or higher. You could use those as well. My teacher tells me I should focus more on my middle range more than my passaggio since I'm young. Is he correct? I can only presume to I can only assume that your teacher has your best interests at heart, and they know your voice well and are trying to help you. I would go with what your teacher says. Yes, do a live event in open space. Cool. Yeah, it'd be cool. Duck, before you drown, I find it hard as a low-voiced male to find a good key to sing certain jazz pieces in, mainly because most of the songs I love, I prefer female-led versions, but I've heard females adapt male songs easily. I thought the SLS method of singing was supposed to be best because it's more natural to comfort zone, meaning I've always heard this. Okay. That's an interesting question. I wonder about... There's like a couple different... I'm not sure. I don't know, Duck, before you drown, if you play and sing... If you do have a low voice, I would imagine that you have been doing this already. But if you're not, consider your chord voicings, particularly for the pianist. That in my mind would be like the first thing that I would look at in trying to get the keys to be, to get good versions of the songs in lowered keys. The SLS method does work for some. That's entirely plausible. Generally I don't really comment a lot on other teaching methods for a variety of reasons, really. But that particular method has definitely there are people who definitely identify with it. I'm of the opinion that there are lots and lots of different methods. Most of the methods, to one degree or another, are repackaging bel canto technique and looking at it from different avenues. So one method may look primarily at vowel alignment. Another method may look almost entirely at breathing and breath support. Another method may take yet another kind of viewpoint. And this is largely because we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we learn in different ways. And goodness me, that reminds me of Mrs. Webster, who had a question that I was supposed to answer. And I'm so sorry, Mrs. Webster, I've waited this long to get to it. She wrote in her question, and I know I've been doing the other email event for questions like this, but I said I would do this. And it is how to stay in shape after you have had your rehearsal schedule and performance schedule end. So had no deadlines to work with now or rehearsals to go to, but they want to go back in the studio in April. Keep your daily practice up. That is the main thing that I can recommend, is keep your daily practice up and keep the songs fresh. One of the things that I think takes a lot of discipline but can be perhaps the most beneficial is to just go through the repertoire only with the vowels or with solid vowels as if you learned it for the first time. In other words, consider the performance as having been a sort of reset, and you're now going to start all over again and rework the tunes with just vowel sounds and things like that. Mandy Cummins, hello, Mandy, and welcome. It's good to see you. Yes, there are 2 live streams, and it's just blah, silliness. It's not supposed to work this way. Obviously, it does, and I have a workaround. It didn't do this a couple weeks ago, and so I thought, oh, well, maybe it's been fixed. Obviously, it has not been fixed. Quick question from Mandy. What are some exercises I can do to identify when I'm using too much scoop, and also to stop doing it? It's not so much exercises as becoming a bit more aware of it and hearing it when it happens. My advice is to, if possible, to do whatever amount of vocalizations that you can do before you're going to do a gig. Do them in an environment that is quiet, isolated. Preferably you have a mirror that you can look into so you can monitor the physical apparatus while you're singing and while you're doing the vocalizations. Have nothing in your hands, have no distractions, and turn your ears to 11 so that you can really, really listen carefully. The only exercises you may notice, I was about to make a mistake there, but I caught myself. Exercises that it might be most noticeable, possibly ones that start at the 5th scale degree. So like and if you've got a scoop, you'll hear the scoop. Your scoops probably won't sound like that. That's me trying to exaggerate so that it's obvious that the scoop is there. It may or may not be harder to hear whatever, if any, scoops you have going on. Hearing the scoops in the middle of a scale can be more tricky. You can hear the kind of greasing up to the 5th scale degree there. The best thing that you can do to try to increase your awareness is to just do your warm-ups with your entire focus being on what you're doing. So, no driving to the gig and warming up and stuff like that. Or if you do most of your warm-up while you're driving to the gig, then when you get there, if you've got 5 minutes that you can be someplace quiet, and do that there. Heidi 32907, I hate scoops. I do that, such a bad habit. Yeah, we got to work through them. Got to work through the scoops. Even if you choose to incorporate it into your performance, which is totally legit, we got to be able to have a choice. And that means eliminating them in our vocalizations. Karina Chen, I like your diaphragmatic warm-up exercises and apogeo exercises. Thank you. I believe the OO exercise is part of the still exercises. I like the way you add the ma in front of that. Groovy. Excellent. The NG on, NG A seems to help too. Brilliant. The sandwich exercises are interesting. I've never heard of that before. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, well, once again, like I mentioned, like the warm-ups on my channel are really technical treatises. They're technical exercises. If you listen for that, you'll hear those exercises do that. I have not heard of anyone else doing that either. I think I'm sure that someone else is doing it. We just haven't heard of who it is yet. But but yeah, it's a big part of my vocal training. It's particularly appropriate, in my opinion, for vocalists who have generally good vowel alignment, but it needs to be a little bit closer overall. And the beautiful part about it is that you really start to develop a parity between the vowels in the sandwich. So, they kind of all inform one another, and you can hear that information go back and forth between the vowels and work through it in a very organic way, which, in my opinion, results in very, very beautiful, well-aligned voices. Was working now driving, so I won't be chatting much till I park. Good. Do not, no typing and, driving with your knees while trying to text or type here. Chris Hernandez says, was wondering if it's possible for a bass to sing tenor. Well, yes, kind of. You're not going. You can certainly emulate the profile. You can emulate the sonic profile of the tenor range vocalist. Your secondo passaggio will not change location. It'll be where it will be, and so that may mean that if you're singing it if you're masquerading as a tenor, as I'm fond of saying, if you're masquerading as a tenor, then some key areas of particularly the classical repertoire may be in keys that are disadvantageous to you, but just keep on practicing and keep on emulating the sound profile. Some things to consider: make sure that you're not too heavy on the bottom. That's going to be your power zone, and so that will be that sounds easy, but that tendency to really sing into that register is because that's one of the places where your voice shines the most, and that will be contrary to the way a tenor would sing it. So listening really carefully to the overall range of the tenor vocalist and emulating that profile, there's no reason to think that you can't develop most of the range that the tenor would develop. At some point, you're going to reach the top of your range, but you'd still be able to sing probably a fairly high percentage of the standard repertoire that we sing. Okay, so what about scoops that are actually part of the melody line of a song? I've been consciously, which I can, not doing it. The only time I notice it's when it's part of the song itself. I'm glad that you're warming up at home, doing my makeup. I thought you were going to do your makeup while you're driving, which is, that's not good either. Want to drive with focus. Yeah, well, that begs a very interesting question, I think, which is, are the scoops there because the original artist wanted them to be there, or is that just an unintentional comment on their overall vocal technique? A lot of times, if you had an artist historically that was scooping that much, they might not have released that recording because it might have suffered quite badly from intonation problems. Now, of course, with auto-tuning and everything else, that's no longer an issue. And so you can hear lots of practices that would usually result in poor intonation or vocal fatigue and stuff like that, but that get released anyway because it can be fixed in the mix. The thing about the scooping is that if you want to incorporate it, do so from the top up. So you have to be vocalized, and your intention has to be to the higher pitch that you're scooping to. And the scoop will be less in volume and less in impact. It'll be lighter overall than the note that you're going to. And that will get you, that'll let you get the most from your voice while still incorporating the scoop. I find that practice to be not terribly difficult, but I feel that it can be very easy to backslide into scooping a bit. I used to scoop quite badly. And that's something I'm quite conscious of in my own singing. So it's not something I want to backslide into personally. So yeah, just you have to be focused on vocalized to and just your intention pitch wise has to be on the upper of the two pitches so that you don't overemphasize the scoop and end up being out of tune on the lower one. How often, Chad? How often do you email the subsequent parts of your A method out? I received the airflow alignments 1 and 2 in the initial email, but I'm anxiously waiting the next step. Yeah, it should come. The third password comes like a day or two after the first two. The idea was to give you a little bit of time to practice with pages 1 and 2. By the way, I think a Chad sent an email to me. I've not been awesome about responding to comments and things like that on the AAA method, but I did get your email, and I will, if it's you who sent the email, I will be responding to your email. And obviously, with events like this, I'm quite active, but I just never ended up being quite as active in the comments of the AAA method and on the website in general. I think it's just the interface, the back end of the WordPress site I find kind of laborious, so I prefer to do things like this and Twitter and stuff like that. A big hello from Croatia. Been doing the exercises for a little while now. Really, really helpful. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will definitely follow you for a long time. Wonderful. Well, I've got some really cool stuff. The videos that came out today, I have to admit, I don't normally make a big deal about this, but I'm really psyched on. If you watch in the, I did the lower version first, then I did the female version. By the time I got to the end of the higher keys, I'm like so like zenned out in the video. Like I've got this goofy expression on my face. I always assume that no one's actually watching the video. They're just like holding their posture, using a mirror and singing along with the audio from YouTube, which is what I would advise you to do. But anyways, definitely check out this week's. I know it says beginner, but just put that aside and dig in. They're super, super comfy exercises and really felt fun. Go-to spot for drills, just be safe, from Ken Trock. Learn new stuff every day. Oh, from me, or every week. Brilliant. So my daughter is expressing a lot of interest in singing now. Her ear has improved drastically over the last year. What can I do to help her? I've shown her where her diaphragm is and how to feel the buzz of resonance in her face. Anything else we can do? She's 8. Make it fun. Make it fun. Sing with her. Try to sing harmonies. Just sing. Sing, 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 sing. Keep it in comfortable ranges for her. You figure out how to... you're the professional, so you figure out how to sing with her. Just keep it comfy for her so that she can really, really sing easily, and just make it fun. Make it fun. Michael, how to record covers, get good audio quality, and on same time don't hide behind microphones. We could talk about that for days. Quickly, know your gear is one thing. So know your microphone, know your pre's, know your DAW. I would avoid over-processing if possible. And if you feel like you're hiding behind a microphone, try doing it off-axis. So, like, I don't have one handy, but I'm very fond of taking, like, if I'm I usually use a TLM 103, a TLM 103 or a U87 to record my vocals, and I will face, like I'm facing you, but I will have the microphone here, with the diaphragm kind of facing towards my mouth. I don't address it directly the way I'm addressing this microphone. And I find that what little I may lose in sort of, I don't know, I can't believe I'm losing any kind of colorations on my voice. But if I'm losing anything at all, it is insignificant in comparison to the comfort and the ease with which I can sing and be in that environment when I'm recording, which I'm going to be doing really soon, hopefully. Any techniques to memorize the lyrics quickly? Observe what works best for you is really the best. So usually for memorization, for me, if I need to memorize something, my first test is just take away the music and see what happens. And then for the blind spots, I usually do a combination of like writing out the lyrics, so I'm kind of trying to create a visual memory of it. That's basically it. Sometimes I might go through like exercises of just brute force memorizing the first few words of a line or trying to imagine visualizations. I know ages ago I did a cover of Across the Universe, and I had to try to imagine the scenes from each of the stanzas to keep the order straight. Duck Before You Drown. Jeff, do you ever listen to us sing in the group on Facebook? There are clips of me singing in there. Sometimes, but not a whole lot. FYI, that reminds me, if you want to keep the conversation going, Facebook, a global voice, Sequencer. Sequencer. The group is Sequencer, a global voice. It's on Facebook. If you want to interact and post recordings, the fact of the matter is, Duck Before You Drown, I have become more busy than I ever have been, and I'm still kind of I'm doing okay in terms of keeping up with what I am tasked with completing, but I'm afraid I hate this as an excuse, but I just don't have time for everything. And Facebook is one of those places that when I started that group, I had an idea about what it was going to be, and it's taken on its own life, which I think is great. And so I'm kind of content to let it have its life rather than try to make it into something that maybe it would be and maybe it wouldn't be. The fact of the matter is that I would probably have to spend so much time doing it that it would prevent me from doing the things that I want to keep on doing, both for YouTube and for I'm finally going to start recording the Udemy course that I've been talking about for like over a year. Few just made it. Hey, Mrs. Webster, I just answered your question a few minutes ago. Chad, 'tis I. Thanks for reading. I see that now, and thanks for reading. Yeah, it makes sense. This is definitely more effective. Excellent. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. Nice to see you, Mandy. Kiwi girl, how do you find out if you are soprano, mezzo, soprano, alto, etc.? Work towards alignment of your vowels, locate the secondo passaggio, and then that will inform your FOC. That's your vocal range. It's kind of a short answer because I do have to wrap this up. Miss Webster, hug. You are busy and having boundaries is healthy. We support each other during the week on Facebook and then come to office hours with you. It's all good. You're awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Webster. I appreciate that. I really want to help. That's why I started this whole YouTube channel. And I think it is helping, and that's really, really awesome. So yeah, but thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll leave it at that. Travis. I'm a tenor one and seems to always clear my throat when singing. You may be straining a little bit where you're getting more mucus. Evaluate your airflow and vowel alignment and see if that has an impact on you. It will probably take a little bit of time to really take effect, but that's what I would advise. Elliot, hello from London. Hello, London. I was living there not terribly long ago. Well, I was living in Amersham, but, 45 minutes away. Your lessons are great. I just want to discuss range. I am sometimes able to sing high baritone. Curious, I'm sometimes able to sing top A's and B flats. Warming up, able to get to top C in certain vowels. However, I can't get these in my comfortable range. Becoming hard because my castings are the high tenor roles. What would you advise to get my range more comfortable? I'm only 19. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's going to be a problem with auditions. I'm sorry to hear that that's a problem. You're welcome, Travis. It would be helpful to know how you are singing those notes. If you think that you're a baritone and you're getting to B flats and perhaps even a C5, you're almost certainly using your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. This is your head voice. Done properly, most people who haven't studied voice would never know that you're not singing in your chest voice. I wonder about Karina, yes, I sometimes do read the lyrics like a text. Yeah, and nervousness can exacerbate that. Yeah. So, Elliot, getting back to your question. My range more comfortable. You haven't said that it's problematic singing up there. So let's just assume for a second that you are making a really smooth transition and everything is going well and you're using your voice in a healthy, sustainable fashion. That in and of itself will build on itself. So the technique of making a smooth transition increases the overall consistency and reliability of your voice. In other words, even though I've been talking like virtually nonstop, which is a fairly taxing thing on the voice, I'm pretty certain that I can have a sip of water, play an A above middle C, and go May without having to revocalize myself. That's the advantage of using your voice that way. If you're belting, then you might not get really good results, or they may be much more unreliable. So I'm wondering about like some different things. I don't know how much they would help you. My first thought is for one, make sure that your vocalizations, assuming that you're doing this in a healthy, sustainable way, make sure that you're vocalizing into this range of your voice every day. Not for a long period of time, just a little bit. Make sure that you're including repertoire on a daily basis that challenges you in this range of your voice. I would absolutely do vocalizations that begin with pitches that are above the secondo passaggio so that you're really challenging yourself to establish good tonal onsets. Those are usually the most anxiety-making kinds of things that we do when it comes to singing upper register stuff. You know, getting the note from the moment that you have to sing it. And you're right, you're 19, so be patient. These things can take some time, but I would hope that you would experience fairly fast-paced results from that practice. This is all assuming that you're in fact using your voice in a sustainable, correct fashion. If you're not, then the inconsistencies can continue indefinitely. Probably most of all, establishing good breath management, and I'm thinking of the Apagio breath management system, will get you the most overall consistent results. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Sorry about the 2-stream thing. It seems like we did okay anyway. So thank you for joining me. I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen again so we can all be in one chat together. Awesome questions. Thank you all for joining me. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. We'll see you next week. Bye.